Imagine a world where the search for El Dorado ended not in riches, but in disappointment. A world where the glistening, heavy, yellow substance we call gold was merely another soft, easily malleable metal, too common or too unremarkable to serve as the bedrock of global wealth. It sounds like a ridiculous premise, doesn't it? After all, gold has been the universal language of value for millennia. It is beauty, power, and security forged into one element. But what if we had collectively decided, early in human history, that gold held no intrinsic worth? How would this single, massive deviation rewrite the entire economic, geopolitical, and technological story of civilization? This is not just a thought experiment about changing the color of your wedding ring. This is a deep dive into the very foundation of human trust and trade. The accepted value of gold today stems from a perfect trifecta of characteristics: scarcity, malleability, and chemical inertness. It does not rust, it is easy to divide, and it is hard to find. These qualities made it the ideal medium for exchange in ancient Lydia, in Rome, and eventually across the entire globe. But let us rewind the clock to a point before the Lydian kings first stamped their crude electrum coins. Suppose early humans found gold to be far too common, perhaps littering riverbeds in vast quantities, thus stripping it of its crucial scarcity factor. Or perhaps, and this is a fascinating alternative, a specific cultural or religious tradition designated gold as unlucky or impure, rendering it untouchable for centuries. If gold never captured the human imagination as treasure, the immediate and most profound effects would ripple through geopolitics and international finance. In our current timeline, central banks around the world hold massive gold reserves. Fort Knox is famous not for its strategic importance, but for the sheer tonnage of gold stacked inside its vaults. These reserves are symbols of national security, economic stability, and the ultimate fallback mechanism should fiat currency fail. In a world without the lure of gold, those physical hoards vanish. The central bank balance sheets, once anchored by this universally accepted metal, must instead be secured by something else entirely. This lack of a universally accepted, non-sovereign standard would have dramatically accelerated the instability of early economies. Without gold to back currencies or settle international debts, trust becomes the primary commodity. Nations would be forced to rely entirely on military strength, political stability, and the perceived productivity of their economy to maintain currency value. The concept of a gold standard, which provided stability throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, would never exist. The Bretton Woods system, which briefly pegged the US dollar to gold after World War II, the very mechanism that established the dollar as the world's reserve currency, would never have occurred in its historical form. Instead of the dollar being as good as gold, it would have had to become as good as the most stable government. This heightened reliance on political trust might have led to earlier and more severe global financial crises, or conversely, forced nations to forge extremely tight economic alliances based purely on mutual productivity and shared interests, rather than shared metallic reserves. War financing would change too. Instead of shipping gold bullion across the seas to pay for arms, nations would have relied solely on loans guaranteed by future production or strategic resources like oil or coal. If gold is out, something must step in to fill the void of universal value. This is the fun part of the thought experiment, identifying humanity's replacement standard. The most intuitive replacement is silver. Silver shares many of gold's characteristics. It is rare, beautiful, malleable, and holds up well against corrosion. Historically, silver has often been the secondary monetary metal. If gold was dismissed as too common or too culturally tainted, silver would naturally assume the throne. But a Silver Age world introduces its own set of complications. Silver tarnishes easily, requiring maintenance that gold does not. More importantly, silver is found in different geological locations than gold. A world where silver is king means that regions rich in silver deposits, the Andes, parts of Mexico, and certain areas of the American West become the primary centers of global economic power much earlier. Spain's colonial ventures in the Americas, already focused on silver extraction, would gain even more overwhelming global dominance, potentially cementing a lasting Spanish or Portuguese linguistic and political hegemony over world trade, far surpassing what occurred in reality. What if we abandoned precious metals altogether? Suppose that very early on, humanity decided that value must be tied to utility and life sustenance. We might have entered the age of wheat units or barley bonds, where the global reserve standard was tied to agricultural output. Such a system would radically change geopolitical focus. Power would not reside in the desolate mountains where metals are mined, but in the fertile river valleys, the Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Yellow River. Wars would be fought less over territory promising mineral wealth and more over arable land, irrigation technology, and control of global shipping lanes for grain. This world might prioritize sustainable farming and ecological management far earlier than ours did, simply because food security is the literal currency of the realm. Or consider a more exotic replacement, platinum or palladium. These metals are chemically superior to gold in many industrial applications and are significantly rarer. If one of these had been recognized early on, the global economic structure would be intensely centralized. These metals are primarily sourced from highly specific and limited geographical areas, such as South Africa and Russia. A platinum standard world would create immediate, powerful resource monopolies, granting immense and perhaps unbreakable economic leverage to those nations controlling the supply. This scarcity could lead to extreme price volatility and even greater economic divide between resource-rich and resource-poor nations than we currently experience. Now let us pivot to perhaps the most overlooked, yet critical consequence of devaluing gold: technology. In our reality, gold's exceptional electrical conductivity and resistance to corrosion make it indispensable in modern electronics. Every smartphone, computer, and advanced piece of telecommunications equipment contains small, yet crucial amounts of gold, ensuring reliability and speed. If gold had no perceived value for centuries, its industrial application might have been completely ignored until very late. Perhaps early electrical engineers dismissed it as merely a soft, heavy curiosity. If they did, then copper, steel, and cheaper alloys would have remained the standard for longer, leading to less reliable, slower, and larger electronics throughout the 20th century. Imagine the early age of computing. Without gold plating on connectors, components would degrade faster. Computers would require more maintenance and replacement parts due to oxidation. The internet itself, relying on high-speed, reliable transmission through gold-tipped connectors, might have been significantly slower to develop and roll out globally. Our entire digital revolution could have been delayed by decades due to poor material choices forced by a historical oversight of gold's conductive properties. However, there is an alternative and much more optimistic technological path. Suppose that when chemists and physicists began studying elements in the 18th and 19th centuries, they recognized gold's conductivity but found it to be incredibly common because we had never bothered to mine it systematically for jewelry or coinage. In this scenario, gold is the cheap, abundant, and superior industrial metal. If gold was never hoarded as wealth, the price point would be incredibly low. A world of cheap gold would be a world of technological abundance. Gold could replace expensive platinum in catalytic converters, making environmental technology cheaper and more accessible. It could be used ubiquitously in medical implants due to its bioinertness, drastically improving long-term health outcomes. Every piece of wiring, every circuit board, every connection could be gold-plated for optimal performance and durability. Our technology would be dramatically more robust and efficient. In essence, a gold-less world forces us to confront a fundamental truth: value is an assigned narrative. We gave gold meaning because of a combination of physical attributes and historical happenstance. In a world where gold is worthless, humanity must anchor its global stability and trade on something else. Whether that anchor is the constant maintenance of silver, the unpredictable availability of platinum, or the necessity of wheat, the choice dramatically changes which nations rise to power, how they wage war, and ultimately, how quickly our technology advances. Perhaps the biggest takeaway is this: the true treasure is not the element itself, but the human capacity to agree on what is valuable, and that agreement dictates where we dig, who we trust, and how we build our future. And in that sense, our entire history is built on a single, shiny convention.